Hey guys, Sandro here from Carcraft Auto Detailing in Melbourne. Today's video is my first unboxing, but also my initial thoughts and testing on the much anticipated Flex XFE7-15 and better known as the Finisher. The Finisher sounds a bit like a hitman, but gives the usually technical German names a bit of added flair. I actually pre-ordered mine a couple of weeks ago and they finally arrived on Australian shores a few days ago. As far as I know, only the 150 with the 6-inch backing plate have come our way, but I'm sure in time the 125 and the 5-inch backing plate will be available. As much as my past and present Rippers polishes have been great, and my DAS 6 Pro Plus and ShineMate polishes equally great when you consider value, I do particularly love my Flex rotary, which I can't fault, and highly respect the Flex VRG, so the Finisher is something that I'm really excited and curious to try. My one came with a few free Zen tool pads, so I might kill two birds with one stone and try them both. And before I fire it up, I just want to give my first unplugged impressions. It really has a unique look to it, especially where the backing plate meets the machine, so it is distinctive. But even more so, a bit of a looker in my opinion. It feels a bit lighter in your hands compared to the DAS 6, but I'd say on par with the Rippers Bigfoot range. The rubber grip feels great instantly, and as you run your hands around it, there's a real sense of solidness and build quality that immediately becomes apparent. And I'm glad to see that it sits flat and doesn't roll over on its back like some of my past and present DAs. The biggest difference visually is when you look at the OPM or oscillations per minute scale, which is way faster than any DA I've seen before, 3000 to 9000 per minute. We're talking rotary engine revs on a machine that has to both spin and oscillate, so that's pretty impressive. And what's more, it'll be interesting to see how certain paints react to such increased oscillations and how the actual compounds, polishes and pads deal and respond to that increased speed. But 3000 OPM is actually a great starting speed for machine or wax sealant application and fine jewelling, as well as spreading the product into the panel before speeding up to correct. I never go slower than 3 to 3500 OPM in any case, as most DAs feel a bit wonky at those lower speeds and lose their uniform motion and are much more prone to stalling their spinning action and just oscillating at such low speeds. There's a center hole on the backing plate which is great for easily mounting pads, at least those with likewise center holes, but more importantly it's there to reduce the heat that is largely generated in the center of pads on dual action machines. So on to firing up this beast. Straight away there's an airflow that's a bit more apparent on this machine and really seems like a lot of air is gushing out into and through the backing plate, which in turn will transfer to the pad product and surface, which can only be a good thing. Heat in general reduces the compounds and polishes work time, increases dusting, makes the wipe off of the product harder, and overall, today's clear coats really don't like it, especially on softer paint. Another plus is that it really seems to make a good fan, so on hotter days it can cool you down as well. But seriously, this is a really important feature that can't be overlooked, and I'm hoping it does make a significant difference in the real world. As I'd hoped, the Velcro backing plate is really super grippy, to say the least, so I'd be surprised if any pads go shooting off, as at 9000 OPM, a dislodged pad could travel interstate. I'm going to try and go a little extreme for this first test, as I want to test both its correcting and finishing abilities, so it's a bit of a go hard or go home challenge. The paint on this panel is a mid to hard paint, and as you can see, it's far worse than any paint you're likely to encounter. The truth is, if I saw paint like this on a job, my initial thought after just torch the car would be to cut it back with my rotary or wet sand it. So if the XFE7 does struggle a bit to correct this horrific paint, all joking aside, I'm not going to be disappointed, as this is a hardcore for any machine, let alone one called the Finisher. But if it does succeed, I will be truly impressed. I'm going to try a few steps, starting with an aggressive pad and compound to test its correcting abilities, and then a polish and polishing pad to see how well the Finisher actually finishes, as well as testing the higher range of OPM to see how the paint and products react. You may know if you've seen some of my previous videos that I really like to thoroughly test my products and equipment before truly judging them. So I want to make it clear that this is just a first impression, and hopefully down the track I'll have some more insight and substantial information based on some real world experience with this new flex. So to start, I'm just going to see how it feels and performs within the standard running speeds, which on this flex is speed 1 to 3. And then I want to feel and see how it goes at the uncharted speeds of 4 and 6. I'm going to use HD cut and HD polish throughout to compare the results with the Zen Tool foam pads and the Lake Country microfiber HDO and black finishing pads. I'll try and keep my method and technique as consistent as possible with 4-row passes in each set of passes, and hopefully have some initial insights on the flex cutting and finishing abilities, as well as my observations and the overall experience from a user point of view. As I go through the footage, I'll display some information about the machine speed and technique I'm using for each set of passes on each section, and hopefully you'll be able to see the results that are being achieved. I want to start by going through all the positive features and things that my testing has revealed. It really does feel rock solid and robust, and to put it simply, it just feels nice in your hand. More so than any other DA I've used, and I'm sure the great rubber grip, as well as its placement more directly over the backing plate, has a lot to do with that. My guess is that it's not an attempt at an improved version of an existing polisher, but rather a new model from start to finish, as its unique and distinctive look and functionality strongly suggests that. One really neat feature I just discovered is that you can actually see whether the pad is spinning or not with the brass coloured screw holes that spin with the backing plate. So there's no need to mark stripes on the backing plate to discover if the rotation is stalling. As I also stated, the Velcro is super grippy, even when compared to any other backing plate I've used in the past. I've heard some people saying that too much grip can damage the pads, but it's just not something I've experienced yet, as long as I'm pulling up on the Velcro section of the pad. Yes, it does take a little more effort to remove, but it's a good trade-off in my opinion, to reduce the chance of losing the pad during operation. The increased airflow really does seem to be translating onto cooling the pads and the paint, with nothing more than a mild warmth felt on the surface throughout the testing. But it will need to be further tested on various temperatures and conditions to gain a more fair and rounded reading of results. Overall, within most of its speed range, its vibration is very low, especially compared to the DAS 6, and also to a lesser extent in comparison to the ShineMate. But it'll be a tough call to distinguish whether it really does vibrate less than the larger Rippers polishers. The noise level is also nice and lower in general than most of its competitors, except when you crank it to top speed. But even then, it's not going to blow an eardrum, and it's within a reasonable level with all things considered. So on to correcting the paint. As I said, and as I'm sure you can see, this paint is trashed, to say the least. But as you can also see, bit by bit, the flex is restoring the finish and removing or at least improving the scratches and overall bad condition of this painted panel. So to put it simply, the Flex XFE7-15, aka the finisher, works. Which I don't think was ever in doubt, but it's best to cover all bases. You do need to play around with your speed, pressure and overall technique, but ultimately you can achieve great improved results, as you can hopefully see. In relation to the Zentool foam pads versus the Lake Country microfiber pads, it was a fairly one-sided result, at least with this isolated test. The microfiber pads were not only able to achieve a higher level of defect removal, but also finished down noticeably better, and what's more, they also ran smoother on the Flex. Now, whether this is because the Flex prefers microfiber pads, or the specific paint and compound combination responded better to microfiber, is something only further testing will reveal, and is by no means an indication that these pads aren't good, just that today, with these specific conditions, they didn't produce the winning results. Now onto some things that are at least questionable in my initial testing. Firstly, I want to say that although there are noticeable differences between the Rupes, DAS Pro and ShineMate polishers, and I'm using these three examples because they are the machines I'm most familiar with, clocking hundreds of hours with each, there is also a uniform and general running system that they all abide to. And the same can't be said with the Flex. Now whether that's a good, bad or just different thing, only time will tell. But at this stage all I can do is comment on what a few hours with this machine has shown me. At speeds 1 and 2, this DA machine becomes more of a single action random orbital. Now I'm not sure if that's intentional, though I would have to assume so. But I guess I need to consider that as an orbital, no matter how limited it may be, it will still correct and refine the paint. But unless you lift the Flex so that it's barely making contact with the paint, it's virtually impossible to use its spinning action at those low speeds. But what is further confusing is that speed 1 and 2 are 3000 to 4200 OPM, which is the equivalent to speeds 4 and 5 on most other machines, and at those speeds, no other DA I've used would store so easily or simply just oscillate. But again, this could be part of the finisher's added finishing range to give the user a straight orbital throw as a finishing option. Next is something that had me equally vexed. I'm not sure how well you could see it in the footage, but there was quite a bit of mild panel hopping, slipping, or at least waddling, which I have to say is a little uncommon for free spinning DA machines, at least to this increased level. And trust me when I tell you that I tried everything I could to correct this, from adjusting my contact angle to the panel, to reducing and increasing both pressure and machine speeds. And although there was a few sweet spots where it was less prominent, it was impossible to fully correct. But again, I'm not sure if this strange wonky motion is meant to be there and is just part of how this more diverse machine works and achieves its results. Another thing I questioned was where this new Flex is really meant to sit in the world of paint machine correction. Although it produced great results dealing with the mild to light defects, it quite honestly struggled with the mid to heavy ones. Although I have been testing products and correcting the paint on this panel for well over a year, so I'm quite familiar with it, I did do a final set of passes with my DAS Pro 6 polisher and the same compound, products and method to try and eliminate any variables. The DAS 6 Pro was able to greatly improve on those defects in only 2 sets of passes, whereas the Flex couldn't achieve that same level of defect removal with 4 sets. Now, although they both are 6-inch polishers, the Flex does have a smaller 15mm throw in comparison to the DAS with a 21mm throw. So it's not completely a fair comparison. But where the Flex struggled to maintain its spinning action on the panel curve, the DAS 6 had no such issues. And really, much to my surprise, although the Flex is far smoother in relation to vibration, the DAS 6 had less wobble with an increased level of control. I'm going to be yet even more honest again in revealing that I actually had a word about it to a detailer that I highly respect, who has tested it as well, and we both initially thought that we had been given a faulty one. But as he confirmed that he had tried 2 others with no difference to be seen, that question was laid to rest. So that brings me back to my initial question of where the Flex XFE7-15 is really meant to sit in the world of paint correction. Within the company's lineup, there's a Flex 14-2 rotary, which can be seen as the first point of contact for heavy paint defect removal, followed by the Flex VRG forced rotation DA polisher, which can be seen as more the middle ground to address the mid to heavy and mid to light paint defects. And now with the appropriately named Flex Finisher, we have a polisher that is here to address the lighter defects in automotive paint and take the finish to a greater level. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that I don't see this DA polisher as a direct competitor to the larger 15 and 21mm throw workhorses out there that are meant to both correct and refine the paint. So far, from what I've experienced, this is a more purpose-designed machine to maximize and give greater finishing qualities and options when trying to polish and finish paint to a greater level. So in conclusion, I'm just going to leave you with a couple of questions that are circulating in my mind. One is that I'm wondering how different this Flex is going to perform with a smaller 5-inch backing plate and pads, as at this stage it feels like it could be a far better option. The other thing that is playing on my mind is that perhaps something is different in the Australian 240 volt conversion. And as this machine has just landed here, it could be a little too early to tell. But it's just strange to me that all the research I've done and videos I've watched, no one has mentioned these issues or even questioned them. Which leads me to believe that either there is something different about the Australian issue version, or no one even wants to question that it really is a game changer and faultless. Trust me, I know it's hard when you love a brand and you spend your hard-earned money on it, to then go and question whether it's living up to your expectations. And although I'm not saying it isn't, I'm saying that I've got some questions I need answers to. This is really a to be continued subject, and like I said, just my first experience with it. I've changed my opinion in the past, and I'm sure it will happen many times in the future. I really hope this video was useful for some of you out there. Please like, comment and subscribe to show your support. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.